What if everything you were taught about marriage was only half the truth? Over the last few videos, we've uncovered a reality most churches won't talk about. That not every marriage is ordained by God. That sometimes the pain you're in isn't your cross to bear, it's your signal to break free. If you've ever wondered why your prayers to save your marriage seem to go unanswered, or why biblical principles don't work in your home the way they're supposed to, you're not alone. In this series, I've shared my story, but more than that, I've shared God's heart. His heart for women trapped in toxic marriages. His truth about the kinds of marriages he puts together and the ones he doesn't. And his promise that your life is not over after divorce. It may just be beginning. Today, we're diving deeper into one of the biggest fears Christian women face when considering divorce: the children. Will the children be okay? Without further ado, here's part 5 of my free course. Now, let's talk about the children. I wanted to talk about one of the biggest fears that Christians have when they're considering the subject of divorce, and that is the children. The statistics on divorce for children are horrific. And they're yet again another way that the enemy has people fearful, right? That's another tool that he uses to get people to stay. How many times have you heard people say, I stayed because of the kids, right? So the people they're staying in these untenable situations that God hasn't called them to because they're afraid of what it's going to do to the kids if they leave. And so I want to certainly deal with that subject, because that was, of course, one of the issues that I was concerned about when I was going through this was what is it going to do to the kids? First of all, in your mindset, you want to realize that when you make the decision to be saved, to be a Christian, you are drafted from the kingdom of the earth to the kingdom of heaven. And kingdom means government. It means the things that you are going to be subject to. And so the statistics that are on divorce, they are the enemy statistics, and they apply to people who are not in the kingdom of heaven. Okay? The people that are in the kingdom of heaven, we submit to the Bible and the promises of God. And so the promises of God are yes and amen. And so when you make the decision to divorce, you can't subject yourself to the world's laws and the world's rules, right? You have to subject yourself to God's laws and God's rules and God's blessings. So what that means is that we're given specific instructions from God to teach and to train our children. And He takes care of us and He takes care of them. He loves us and He loves them. He has a plan and purpose for us. He has a plan and purpose for them. And so that doesn't change because you decide to get a divorce. Okay? You're still submitted to Him and His will. He still loves you. He still has a plan and purpose for you. And He still has a plan and purpose for your kids. And so the things that, in my experience, you need to do to ensure that your kids are able to partake in that and not be subjected to the world's statistics on divorce are several things. First of all, if you go and research those same statistics, okay, the statistics that they push fear with and they scare everybody to death with are statistics that on children who their parents never recover from divorce. The reason why I decided to do this is because when people do make the decision to get a divorce, they end up staying stuck, they end up staying stagnant, and they end up not, moving towards God's will for them, not experiencing God's freedom and that kind of thing. Okay, well, the statistics on divorce are on children whose parents do that, right? The number one influencer of children and how their lives turn out is their parents. So you have a lot more control than you think. God gave you the mandate and the responsibility of raising them for a reason. And you still have that responsibility whether you're divorced or not. God charges you to take that responsibility seriously and to participate in doing that. And he has promised that if you do that, then he'll do his part, and he will make sure that they don't depart from it when they get older. That I really want to talk about is the myth of that, the children are not going to be okay, and that having children that come from a broken home is something that has to be avoided at all costs, even if it means staying in a toxic marriage. Okay, so I want to dispel that myth, because a lot of times as Christians, we have to understand that when we accept Jesus Christ, we are moved from the kingdom of darkness to the kingdom of light, and kingdom is government. And so what that means is the way that we govern ourselves and the rules that we follow and the consequences that we endure, and the way things work for us is different than the way that it works for the world. And so for the world, the statistics that scare you to death about children coming from broken homes, they apply to that kingdom, but we're not in that kingdom anymore. And so, and even in that kingdom, if you really look, you'll find studies that show that, even when children come from a broken home, if the issues that those children have, if you compare those issues to the issues of toxic marriages where both parents are in the home, but the relationship is toxic and continues to be toxic, the effects on the children are the same. So if you're saying, oh, I'm going to stay for the children because I don't want them to be in a broken home, but your marriage is toxic, the consequences that you're fearing are going to happen to them regardless. If you know what I mean, if that's your mindset, the effects are the same. Okay. So I want you to understand that's one of the biggest myths, that there is research out there that shows that, it affects children just as deeply to be in a relationship. In a household where there's toxicity, where one parent is mistreating the other parent or beating the other parent or verbally abusing the other parent or whatever, that has the same effect on kids as it does growing up in a household where two parents are not there. So that's one piece of it. But the other piece of it is that as Christians, we don't operate in that kingdom anymore. And so, we have to define what a broken home is in our kingdom, right? So in our kingdom, a broken home is a home where Christ isn't there. Okay. So whether you are in a marriage or whether you're divorced, if Christ isn't in your home, it's a broken home. Okay. And so if your fear is that you don't want your children growing up in a broken home, then introduce them to Jesus Christ. And that solves that problem. Okay. Because he is Alpha and Omega. He's the beginning of the end. Beginning and the end. He is omniscient, omnipresent, so he has the ability to be both mother and father. Okay. So it doesn't matter if you're a single mom. It does not matter, if you have gone through a divorce. If your children know to lean on God, that's what they need anyway. Because at the end of the day, that he is the only one that will never disappoint them, never leave them or forsake them. That's what they need to, that's the takeaway that they need to get from you as their parent, is that they need to lean on God, and that needs to be their source for everything. And if they understand that, the effects of the divorce are not going to be, oh gosh, they have terrible relationships and they don't know, don't have any self-esteem and blah, 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 blah. Like none of that matters if you introduce them to Christ. And so this myth of I have to stay in this toxic, abusive marriage for the kids because I don't want the kids growing up in a broken home, that's a myth. Okay. If you don't want the kids growing up in a broken home, introduce them to Christ. And part of doing that means introducing them to the way that Christ wants us to be treated, right? So Christ doesn't want us in a toxic relationship and being mistreated. He didn't die for you. He literally, in his word, says he died that we may have life and life more abundantly. Toxic marriages are not abundant life. Okay. They're not. And we don't want to model that in front of our children. We don't want them growing up believing that this is normal. This is how things should operate. This is how you should treat your wife, or this is how you should allow your husband to treat you. We don't want to model that to them. Okay. And so even though we don't want to model them that divorce is the norm, we do want to model them that it is important that you find the one that God has for you. Okay, and then you won't have to go through a divorce, right? That's the message we want to send to them. We don't want to send to them, if you do make a mistake and you marry someone that God doesn't have for you, it's a life sentence. You just have to stick it out and stay there forever and be treated whatever way they feel like treating you. That's not what Jesus died for us to have. I am Amanda Nicole, and I am the CEO of Freedom Through Divorce. And so I create personal development courses and ebooks and all kinds of things that are geared towards women of God who have been through divorce, who are considering divorce, and who want to move towards freedom and finding their purpose in God. So, what is Freedom Through Divorce? Well, Freedom Through Divorce is actually an online school full of personal development courses for women of God who have been through divorce or who are considering divorce. Anyone who has had to deal with divorce understands that it is extremely difficult. There are so many balls that you have to juggle. Will the children be okay? Is this something that God is going to be okay with? How does it affect my relationship with God? How am I going to learn how to be independent as a new single person or a new single mom? There's so many things you have to consider. And as a Christian, there are just so few resources out there to help you understand how to navigate those things. So this is a school that really goes from considering divorce and understanding God's views on divorce, when it's acceptable, when it's not acceptable, and understanding that there are so many more cases where God sees divorce as acceptable than what is normally taught out there. And it does it in a way that is not condescending, that's not judgmental, that is just giving you the information from God's heart. And most importantly, is from someone that's been through what you're going through. It's not just theology. It's not just, I read this or I heard this, but it's someone that's actually walked through it. So the personal development courses are meant to help you move and experience freedom through divorce, because there's so many people who they get a divorce, but they don't thrive afterwards. They stay stuck. They stay bitter. They stay telling anyone that'll listen how terrible their ex is. And that's not God's plan for you. God wants you to be able to move towards the purpose and plan that He has for your life and to thrive so that the chapter of your life post-divorce is better. That's what the word says. It says your latter days shall be greater than the former days. So that's what Freedom Through Divorce is all about. It's personal development courses that you can take the information from a biblical perspective and experiencing God's freedom, His prosperity, His love, His joy, His peace, all of the fruits of the Spirit and the blessings that He sent His Son to die for you to be able to have. Just because you've had to go through a divorce does not mean that you are negated from the promises that God has for you. So that's what Freedom Through Divorce is. If you're interested in learning more, visit our school today.